And Jay, the fact that you think my background is fake, I'm going to take that as a compliment.
It is a compliment. The lighting's beautiful.
Thank you.
The
My
light,
my whole goal was like I just wanted to feel inviting, and if I could do that, that was a win.
nice.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. I think of that as your podcast too. I've seen a lot of, in-person podcasts where sometimes it's like dark and dingy. Everyone has their own style. But when I was thinking like you probably intentionally made that, even like the distance that you're away from the guests and like the lighting and just the room. It's, I always think like not in a manipulative way, but like how do you disarm people just so they feel comfortable? And I think the setting has a lot to do with it.
I'm someone who loves Easter eggs. So depending on how conscious and aware you are when you're in the space, people will notice Easter eggs. There's like pictures of eyes for eye contact. There's heart-shaped things to open the heart. There's all these beautiful
Interesting.
Easter eggs all over the studio because to me, I fully agree. I think there's a energetic field and energetic space that's created and it allows for so much. There's a reason why we feel calm when you walk into a spa or when you're walking in nature, and there's a reason because there's not lots of right angles. If you look in nature, there's just like beautiful shapes and everything's broken and unfinished and imperfect. And so I tried to use that for the studios. Like, how do we make it feel raw and real as opposed to perfect and expertly curated? So yeah, I love playing around with images and signs and scents and sounds and all of this stuff. It's a beautiful way of creating an energetic field for sure.
That's cool. The other thing I noticed, I feel like I learn my best teachers sometimes are people who interview other people and just watching them do their thing. And I felt like one of the things that you do really well is I never feel like, and I don't know if you've ever got this before, but I never feel like you're thinking about the next question while the person is talking. And it's a habit of mine, right? And I always feel like you're in the moment and you're not just acknowledging and repeating what the person's saying, but you synthesize it. And as a viewer, I'm like, okay, that's either natural or a learned skill, and I got to get better at it.
Oh, well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. I think I learned early on that if I was present and if I listened and if I was able to reflect back to my guest the truth of what they were saying, then actually I would know what question to ask. So there's a lot of trusting that comes with that because you're absolutely right. I don't know what the next question I'm going to ask is. And I'm almost formulating it while I'm reflecting back to the person what I heard and what I gained. And so there's a big part of surrender and trusting in that because I may not find it. And I'm okay with not finding it because I'm also okay with awkward pauses and uncomfortable silences because I think that's what's real. I always say, either when I ask a question and my guest pauses, I always say, we're going to leave this thinking in there. Or if you ask me a question today and I pause to think about it because I don't have an immediate answer, I hope that you'll leave it in there because it's important for people to know that a lot of these things require introspection and require pausing and require reflecting. And it's a powerful process to be able to do that in front of people as opposed to editing it out and seeming like everything's just constantly in flow. And so I think that being present and trying to listen effectively means you'll actually know what question to ask. And it will be a better question than the one you thought of anyway, because it will be real. And
Yeah.
and I'm happy you perceived it that way. That means the world to me. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
that.
So you're sitting in front of Arnold Schwarzenegger. I could tell you're prepared, but you don't have a list. I'm looking at your video. Like you don't have, I don't know if I can see a teleprompter. You don't have questions and an iPad in front of you, nothing.
I will have a list of questions next to me,
Okay.
usually on.
Okay.
No, I will. And I have those. If I'm completely honest, though, I probably use 10% of them.
Okay.
And if not less. And I feel really bad for my team who works really hard and does the research. But I spend a lot of time studying
Yeah.
that beforehand, and I will deep dive into the research. It's not like I wing the interview, and
Yeah.
I don't believe in that. I think you have to respect the person opposite you, and I think respect has two sides to it. The first respect is preparation, and the second respect is presence. And both of them are showing respect to the other person. Because if I only prepare Now I'm just asking a series of questions, and it's like, oh, thanks for that answer. Great. Now let's move on. And it's like, well, I didn't respect what you just said. And sitting in front of Arnold's crazy because he's a story machine. He has lived. He has incredible life experience. He's an incredible storyteller. He's amazing in terms of his reflection. He's a really thoughtful, smart individual as well. And he really still has this zest for life. So he really wanted us to do it at his studio so he could show me the original alien costume and the original Terminator costume, all this stuff. Like, and he wanted to show me all his trophies. He just has that energy for life. And I think that's the thing we all love about him, where it's like, despite him doing this for decades, he is in love with his life and the life he's created, and he should be. He deserves it. So yeah. I think a part of respect is also being present with someone, not just preparing, but I definitely prepare. I always have a backup set of questions for me to turn to if for whatever reason I'm in a space where I feel I need them, but I don't rely on them that often. And I think the preparation means I know the important points that I want to bring up.
I love it. I know he was one of my heroes growing up. It's even like as some baseball players that were my heroes and I idolized growing up. Did you ever have, growing up in London, I'm not sure if you were like more maybe a soccer fan or, football. Did you have a hero or two growing up as a kid?
Absolutely. I think when I look at it, it's funny because I'm going to give two very different sets of people, but yeah, in one sense, there's lots of interesting nuances and subtleties as to why they connect. But on the entertainment front, I'd say I was a huge, and still am, huge David Beckham fan growing up. Obviously, he captained England, played for Manchester United, which is the team I support. A really incredible person with, again, an amazing story. I think the Beckham documentary was the first time a lot of people learned about what he's actually been through on Netflix. I think it came out last year or the year before, but he's had a phenomenal life and a really incredible journey. So David Beckham was there. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, big fan of his when I was a wrestling fan, WWE and WWF, even just before when I was watching it. And so watching Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and him talking about his depression. So I read both of their autobiographies in my teens. And then at the same time, I was reading Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. And I was really fortunate that I picked up their biographies or their work very early on in my life. And I think that my world is kind of putting those two things together, where there's this impact and service, and then there's this storytelling and emotion and real life of people that we see and hear about. And so, yeah, I was very, very fortunate to dive into real stories very early on in my life.
This just happens to be on my desk. It's a Polaroid of me, and I'm like maybe 15 with Dwayne Johnson at the mall.
No way! I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
that's great. I've never met him, but we've exchanged a lot of messages, and he's always been very encouraging. So I haven't met him yet.
That would be definitely a good one.
It will when it happens. When it happens.
Yeah, I know you've asked this question. I was curious to hear it from you. Do you have a childhood memory that comes to mind that maybe we haven't heard about, but that maybe shaped who you are today?
That you haven't heard about? I've shared so much, so let me think about that for a second.
Jay, one of the things that came to mind when I was listening to one of your recent interviews, you said your mom was like a shield for you, and I'm not sure if that was like emotionally. And so, yeah, that was the thing I was also thinking about, like what was it like growing up? Why did you feel like she was that emotional shield for you?
I think it was because I was bullied at school for being overweight. I was bullied at school for the color of my skin. There weren't a lot of Indian people in the area I grew up in, the school I went to, and I was overweight growing up. So that was a thing that got picked on constantly, but I never felt unloved at home. And I also felt that my mom was great at disciplining me and then forgiving me and helping me to move on with that. And I think that balance of, some people often ask me, what's a trait that I've noticed in the highest performing people in the world that they all share? And the answer I've been giving lately is that they all have high standards. They hold themselves to higher standards than anyone else ever would. And I felt my mom did that for me. She held me to very high standards, expected a lot from me in a good way. And at the same time, they have high grace. when they don't hit that standard, when they don't make it, there's a sense of compassion and love and empathy. And Roger Federer put it best in this Dartmouth University commencement speech that he gave last year, I think. And he said, when I'm playing a point, it's the most important point in the world. But when that point is gone, whether I won or I lost, it's now the least important point in the world. And the next point is the most important point in the world. And so for me, I feel like that's what I believe my mom did for me, where I was always required to be the best version of myself in the moment. But if I didn't meet it, I was met with love and compassion and empathy from my mom. And I think that that's what we're all looking for, because most of us are either too hard on ourselves or we're too easy on ourselves, right? We all know when we're super lax and complacent and we let ourselves go and we're eating badly, we're not taking care of ourselves, we're not working hard, we're not disciplined, we're sleeping late. Like, we know what that feels like. And often what we do is we go from being really easy on ourselves to being really hard on ourselves. So then we flip-flop and pendulum. And then we're just like criticizing ourselves and we're being harsh to ourselves and we're saying mean things to ourselves in the mirror. And both of those just become this oscillating pendulum of I hate myself to I falsely love myself. And it doesn't work. Whereas reality is I'm going to hold myself to high standards always. I'm going to require the best from myself. And when I don't meet them, I'm going to meet myself with empathy and compassion so that I can get back on where I left off. Because guilt doesn't help you grow, and you won't change if you keep shaming yourself. And so you have to get to a point of high standards, high grace. And so I think that's what my mom did for me unconsciously. She never used that language.
Wow.
She never explained that for me. But when I think about my mom, that's what comes to mind.
What a great reflection on just your upbringing. I mean, I think about that stuff now. I'll be honest. The first time I saw a therapist, the biggest lesson I took away was that she said that I was too judgmental of myself. I never consciously thought of that. And then she would catch me and she goes, "There you go again." I said, I didn't even know I was doing it. And so to give ourselves some grace, I think it's maybe one of the hardest things to do. It makes me think of like Brianna Wiest's work. Like she wrote a book on self-sabotage, which I love.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Yeah. I was thinking about you and Simon Sinek had a recent interview, and you guys were joking that like if you were on TV and there was like lower thirds, like what would your title be? And you and I had an interview about 2 years ago, and I struggled with like, what do I call Jay? Like, do I use monk or podcaster? You know, it's funny. I struggled with that with myself. And I was thinking about if you had the lower thirds, and this is my observation, is that it's really like your big thing is helping people find their purpose. Right. And then I think you guys said like the vehicles are the podcasts and speaking and all those things. And so I love that video that you recently put up. I think everyone should watch it if they don't feel like they're doing their purpose right now. And there's a few I'd like to unpack, if it's okay with you. I'd like to unpack a few things here.
Yeah.
Okay. So one was the MLK quote, and I'll read it for you. I think it's MLK. It's those who love peace must learn to organize as effectively as those who love war. I'm wondering if you could just unpack the significance of that quote.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite quotes. It's something that spurs a lot of my work. It's why I'm strategic. It's why I'm focused on intention as much as I am as execution. It's why I believe that strategy and sincerity go together. It's why I believe that affection and assertiveness go together. It's why I believe that execution and empathy go together, and we're not meant to choose. And I think the mistake that has been made in the past is what Martin Luther King says the best, that those of us who love peace and love, we believe that you don't need to be organized. We believe that you don't need to be effective. We believe that you don't need to be productive. We believe that you don't need the systems in place in order to deliver that peace and love. And I mean, if Martin Luther King Jr. believes it, and who brought about so much incredible change in the world, I'm not saying it's my opinion, it's his words. if we can't trust his words on that, that actually those of us who love peace and love, we need to organize and have the same systems as the people who love war. Because the people who want to break things down are very organized, they're very systematic, they're very strategic. And we often look down on system strategy and execution. But what we don't realize is those are also just energies that can either be used for good or not used for good. They're just a resource. They're not good or bad inherently. Like, is strategy good or bad? I mean, the best charities in the world are strategic. The best nonprofits in the world are strategic. The best leaders in the world are strategic. You're not going to have something that's effective in the world that doesn't have strategy as a part of it. And so I'm just encouraging people who want to do good in the world to also study the systems. And when I say systems, I don't mean systems that are manipulative or systems that are exploitative or taking advantage. I mean systems in the sense of, if I didn't understand how social media works, I couldn't spread my message. It's just not possible. And so
you're not winging it. I think that's that was my big takeaway. Is you're not just going to wake up and discover your purpose. Like, you've got to do the work.
Yeah,
and then
if you want to find your purpose and you want to live it and you want to do well and you want to do good in the world, it doesn't just come to you. I think we've misled people by saying, hey, if you're a good person, then success will come to you. I think if you're a good person, you'll be happy. But I think if you want to be successful, you then have to be focused and know how to channel that good into a way of making impact. And that's where I think purpose comes in. Purpose is your passion in action. And so it's the action part as well as having that passion. I was as passionate about what I do now for 10 years before anyone ever cared what I was doing. And that was only because I didn't have a plan and I wasn't taking bold action on it. And so I was as passionate and as intentional and cared as much as I did, but it wasn't having the impact that it's having today because I didn't know how to build it into a purpose. And so that's going to require work and structure. And by the way, that work humbles you. That work comes with so many blessings. So it's not that the work only helps you get out there. That work makes you more humble. That work helps you become more disciplined. That work helps you manage your time better. That work actually makes you better. So it's not that the work is just helping you spread your message and be strategic. That work's actually making you and challenging you to be a better human. So all of it works together in helping you grow.
You've got this framework in that video that you share. What do you think is I'm sure you meet people all the time and they like want to find, like, what do I do? Long term, what do I want to do? What do you think is the hardest part of finding your purpose through your experiences?
The hardest part about finding your purpose is believing that your purpose is one thing that you find, and then once you found it, you just do it, rather than it being something that's a commitment every day. It's almost like saying, I want a physically, I mean, and let's just be really direct and crude with the example to help it, but I want a six-pack. That's not something you get and never lose. It's something you commit to daily. And there are a set of daily habits and practices that allow for you to display that. And that's what purpose is. Purpose is not this thing that once I get it, I never lose it. It's a daily commitment, a daily habit, a daily practice. And so I think what trips us up with purpose is I want to find that one thing that now I'm never going to have a hard day. I'm always going to be happy. I'm never, ever going to struggle. Everything's going to make sense. Everything's going to be clear. If you go on a hike today, it's not always going to be clear. It could be foggy. There could be a different step. There could be a part that's closed off. Your purpose is constantly active and dynamic, where you're going, wait a minute, do I go left or do I go right? Is this bringing me closer to my purpose or further away? And so when you look at your purpose as active and dynamic and real and growing and evolving and moving and changing, that's a healthier view than, hey, I know what it is now. And I think that's what me and Simon were talking about, where my purpose is not to be a podcaster. your purpose is not to be just a writer or an interview. Like, that's not your purpose. That is a vehicle for how you share what your purpose is. And so if my purpose is to help people find peace and purpose every day, or make the world healthier, happier, and more healed, that's going to take lots of different versions. It could be me writing books, it could be podcasts, it could be TV and film, it could be retreats, it could be courses, it could be charity work, it could be philanthropy, it can be so many things. And it's not one of those things that defines me. But when we go, okay, well, I think my purpose is to be a speaker. And it's like, well, no, that doesn't make sense, because I may not be able to be a speaker every day. That may not be what I'm afforded and allowed to do. And so I think that's where we go wrong, where the world has made us search for titles, and purpose is about transformation, not titles. And so if you define yourself by a title, not by a transformation, you're moving away from your purpose, not closer.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's the find your passion advice is, you can't take it at face value, to your point, right? Like, it is, no, you're not just going to discover it under a rock one day. You've got to put in the work. Which makes me think, I often ask this question, like, if you were to give a commencement speech, what would you say? But you did at Princeton. So not to put you on the spot, but did you feel like you got the message? Because I imagine this is hard, right? I mean, a TED Talk is one thing, a corporate function is another, but, I don't know, a few thousand 21-year-olds in front of you, you could lose them really quick. Did you feel like you got the message across that you wanted?
So it was a huge honor to be invited to Princeton. I mean, what an incredible institution, what an amazing history, and what an amazing set of alumni that have graduated from there. And so I didn't graduate from Princeton. And so to be invited to give the class day commencement speech was truly such an honor, and I was so grateful to be there. And it's really beautiful because the class day committee the students choose who they want to come and give the commencement. So, it was very, very,
it's
very
humbling.
Yeah, very, very humbling. Yeah, very, very humbling. And you're meeting these people who are so smart, so accomplished, and in every way, not just academically. I was really, really blown away by the level of kindness and authenticity and realness from these students. Like, they were special, no doubt. And I think often the future of the world is painted very morbid, and we're worried about kids these days. And as we get older, we all start saying things like, "Oh, in my time," that kind of stuff. And I was really, really touched by the depth that these students had and these graduates had. So I was moved. I was definitely nervous, and I probably haven't felt that nervous for a long time, in a good way. And so I was happy. I was excited about it, because I've grown up watching commencement speeches. I love commencement speeches. And I've watched them even when I wasn't trying to graduate for them. Like, that wasn't the reason. I was watching them because I feel like some of the best advice is hidden in those speeches. And I've said this before, but at one point in time, I listened to Steve Jobs' Stanford commencement speech for 9 months in a row every day. And I believe it's the best speech ever given, or at least in the top 3. And so for me, that speech has changed my life. And I wanted to create something timeless that someone could listen to for decades from now and still feel that it resonated and it connected, like I think Steve Jobs' does. I really feel that the tone I took was different from a lot of speeches. And it was because I was really trying to find what my unique offering in that space is. There are so many incredible speeches. And I would honestly say that it was only after, when I was approached by hundreds of students, hundreds of students, that I realized how deeply they were listening and how much they took it in. And I had so many of them approach me afterwards and just say how much they just felt it resonated, and how surprising and different it was from the Follow Your Passion commencement speech that they often hear, and how they're often told to just chase their dreams and not give up. And they just felt that this was real, authentic advice. And so I was really, really touched by that. And then, of course, we shared it on social media, and it's had, gosh, God knows how many views it's had now on Instagram. Like I think we've shared a couple of clips, and I think it's got like, I don't know, I could be wrong. I can check the stat and get it for you later, but I think it's got
You
like,
had a lot of good moments, I felt like, in terms
yeah,
of
yeah. I
you
think it
took
has,
them on a journey, right? You joked around with the parents. You
yeah,
talked about doing work in quiet, not comparing yourself to others. Yeah, I had a quote on my office wall for, I had it on there so long. When I tried to erase it, it was still there. It was like gray. And it was comparison is the thief of joy.
yes,
And in another way, you talked about that, which I
yeah,
loved.
yeah. I was flipping that quote on its head a little bit because I love that quote. But what I've realized is that it's human to compare. It's actually really hard to not compare yourself because comparison is somewhat a human trait. And I think we can demonize it sometimes. And I think we can beat ourselves up about comparing ourselves to others. But for me, I was talking about how there's two sides to comparison. There's envy, which is the negative side of comparison, which doesn't help you. When you envy someone, you become bitter, you don't learn from them, you get disappointed, you become de-energized, you become drained. But when you study, which is the other side of comparison, you actually can learn, you get excited, you get to study and obsess over this person and learn from their mistakes. And now you're living in their success. And so I've compared myself to people my whole life, but I've focused on trying to study over envy. And I think when you make that switch, now you can look at people, but you're looking at them. And I actually saw this. I saw a study about purpose, and it was saying that the difference between people who find their purpose and live a fulfilling life and those who don't is that they study over envy successful people. And so I think
Interesting.
the idea of studying people is the positive, healthy side of comparison. And so I was encouraging them to do that is, hey, find people that you admire, find people that you're inspired by, but don't envy them, because if you envy them, you may not get to where they are. If you study them, you may achieve some more incredible things in your life.
I love that. And one of the parts that stuck out to me, you talked about Roddy and how she doesn't take things too seriously, and sometimes you do. But I'd love to hear a little bit, like when you mentioned the story about you guys moved to New York, and maybe money was tight. Was that, would you say that was like one of the hardest moments? And I love that you were able to make light of it. But was that one of the hardest moments, and just in terms of your transition?
I think it's hard as a South Asian when you get married, and when you get married as a South Asian, and maybe other cultures feel similarly, but I know in our culture, when you get married, it's almost like, all right, now you got to take care of this person. Like you better have it all together. Like it's not like now's the time to experiment. So what happened is we got married, and 2 weeks later, I got the dream job offer of my life to move to New York and work with Ariana Huffington. And my wife and I had committed to living in London 5 minutes away from her parents, which was a promise I'd made while we were dating, that that's what we would do. And so, and while we were engaged too. And so we have to get over that. 3 months later, because it takes a while to get the visa and everything else, something like that, we moved to New York. And so now we're in a new city where we don't have any family. We don't know the city. I've never lived in New York. I maybe have visited it once or twice for like vacation for like a week or a weekend. I've never really been there. I don't really know too much about it. So we're living in a new city, no family, no friends, no community. My wife's upset and sad because she's away from family, and we just got married, and she thought she was going to be able to see her sister and her nephew and her mom and dad all the time, and she doesn't have that, and she doesn't have any other friends here. And I'm trying to build my career at this new job that I'm also learning about, and at the same time trying to make sure that we're good and all the rest of it. New York's super expensive compared to anything I've ever experienced in my entire life. And things aren't easy. So yeah, that was definitely a difficulty in that time, emotionally, financially, and on so many levels, maybe even spiritually. And I think that brought us closer together when it could have torn us apart. And the biggest thing it gave me was a deep sense of confidence and resilience in myself, because I didn't even think I would ever get through those months. And especially when I transitioned to work for myself and, didn't have the stability of a job, for me at that point, it was really challenging to go, well, if this doesn't work out, where are we going to go? What are we going to do? And so I'm happy that I've been there. I wasn't happy then, I'll tell you that right now. At that point, I was not preaching, hey, failure is a stepping stone to success. Like
Yeah.
I was like, oh God, I don't know how I'm going to survive. But I'm really grateful that I got to go through that, because I had a mentor, and I might have quoted, I can't remember if I quoted this in the commencement speech, but I had a mentor who said to me, only when you're in pain will you realize your potential. And I always used to say to him, I'm like, yeah, whatever. Like, that's all just like cool motivational stuff. Like I know my potential. And I can honestly say that I had no idea what gear I could switch into until I went through that pain. And sometimes people don't find themselves under pressure. I did. And I'm grateful I went through that, because it really created a deep sense of strength in myself that I don't think I had before that.
Wow. Appreciate you sharing that. Yeah, I was like, you mentioned it, and I get the audience you're talking in front of, but it was one of those things that it sort of stayed with me after watching this speech. And yeah, I'm glad that it was a great moment. Um, the thing that surprised me most, Jay, like you said, there's like 4 big decisions we're going to make in our lives, 4 situations. I kind of guessed what the first 3 were, right? The fourth caught me off guard. It was, how you'll serve humanity. I'm just curious, why was that the fourth? Because you could have said who you marry, like where you move. You could have said those things. Why did you decide number 4 really needed to be said?
Well, as always, all of my work has been deeply based on the Vedas, 5,000-year-old literature that I studied during my time as a monk. And there are 4 steps to perfecting human life in the Vedas. They are dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Dharma means purpose. Artha means money. Kama means love. And moksha means liberation. And the 4 most important decisions in life are based on dharma, artha, kama, moksha. And because I believe that if something's lasted 5,000 years, it's probably true. There's very few things on planet Earth that have lasted 5,000 years.
So this is the book. Is this
These are the Vedas, that are the spiritual texts that have lasted 5,000 years. And in there, they talk about the 4 ways to perfect human life, or the 4 purposes of human life. And these are the 4. And so that 4th one I put in there is my interpretation of moksha. Moksha is liberation. It's connection with the divine. It's connection with God, if you look at it very literally in the book. But my takeaway to that, for the students that day, was what I've noticed, and it's kind of in that order, that when people finally end up with everything, they end up realizing they have to give it away. And there's very few people who have everything who are not really thinking about giving it away. I had the opportunity to interview Bill Gates earlier this year. And I knew he'd given away a lot, but I didn't realize he's given away 50% of his wealth already. So he's given away like 50 or 60 billion dollars of his wealth. And I'm blown away by that. And, we were talking about some of the people that we know mutually. And he was just like, hey, me and you got to work on convincing that person to give more money away. I was like, great, let's do it. And so like, that's really what his focus was on, was like, how do we encourage people who have a lot to give it away? And so I've noticed that service, and if you look at the studies, it shows that service is what the human heart is almost created for. I've said before that we're wired for generosity, but educated for greed. And we all know that we're happier when you do something for someone else with no expectation than when you do something for yourself. And I believe his name's Michael Norton. He gave a great TED talk on this. And I think he did this study at Cambridge where they gave students $5, $10, $20, and they asked half of them to spend it on themselves and the other half to spend it on someone else. And it's really funny because whether they bought something for someone else or whether they bought something for themselves, they spent money on the same things. It was Starbucks, makeup, and Starbucks. Like those were the 3, those were the things I think that Michael Norton says. And so they so they spent this money. And so whether you bought your friend a Starbucks or whether you bought yourself a Starbucks, he said that people who bought something for someone else, their happiness grew by 10%, but people who bought something for themselves, their happiness didn't go up or down. And then they tested this out in other countries. They tested this out with other test groups. And they found every time, even the studies on depression showed that even people with depression who serve those with depression, their depression decreases. So service is part of life that we've missed. And I think the challenge is we're encouraging all these young people to go off and become successful and do really well for themselves, but only for them to be 40, 50, 60 years old and then go, well, what was the point of life? Because I'm not happier. And what do I do now? And so I wanted to make sure that I'm hoping some of those students completely ignored the speech this time, but in 25 years, they'll watch it back and go, got it, right? Like that's my hope. Like that's what I did it for. It's like that point would have totally gone over their head. But I hope 25 years from now, they watch that speech again and go, okay, got it. Like this is the phase of my life where I can give back even more. And I'm not saying you have to wait till you're 50 to give back. I think there are so many people that are giving back right now. I just don't want, I think if anyone has privilege and anyone has success, they have even more of a responsibility to give back.
Yes.
And I think that those who don't are already probably giving back. My parents didn't have a lot. They always gave back. And we didn't have a lot growing up. My parents always gave back. It was part of the culture. And so to me, if someone has privilege or success, they have even more of a responsibility to give back and serve and support. And so I felt I'm talking to a group of students who are likely going to go off to do very, very well. How do we make sure they do that? By the way, there are lots of students in that group also who are turning towards nonprofit work and doing business work to help impact. Like it's not like everyone there just wants to be rich. There were so many people there who want to do it. So I have to give credit to the students too, that there are so many of them that are already living that. They gave out so many awards that day to students who are doing amazing impact work in the world. And so it's not that they even needed to know that. I just wanted them to know that it's almost reassuring that they're on the right path, even more than me telling them. I think they know it.
I worked at Google for a short time, and I did not go to an Ivy League school, and it was so impressive. The people around me, their character, it was just so impressive. I can't tell you how many people taught over English overseas, or, like those programs that they took part of. They weren't really making any money, but they were just making a difference in the world. It was just something I always admired. And I'll tell you, 9 out of 10 of my coworkers went to Yale or Harvard or Princeton. And so I love that you had that idea.
I love that. Yeah, no, absolutely. It was like I said, so many of them are living it already. And
yeah.
I just don't want to sell people short. I don't want to tell people that success and service, again, it's always the paradoxes. Earlier, I said strategy and sincerity, affection and assertiveness, empathy and execution, and success and service go hand in hand. It's when they live together that we live incredible lives. It's when they're separate that we don't live great lives, right? It's like when we feel we have to choose between success and service, that's when life doesn't make sense. Because if you can't take care of yourself, how are you going to serve? And if you don't serve, then are you really taking care of your soul?
Yeah.
And so that's what I'm trying to encourage the world to do, because I think we keep getting caught in this rhetoric of money doesn't buy happiness, to chase happiness, or then chase money, forget happiness, right? It's like, and I'm like, wait, we're getting it all wrong. Like, we're getting it all wrong. It was success and service. They go hand in hand. They work together. Yeah. Let's encourage people. So I'm trying to live in that middle. The Buddha called it the middle path for a reason. And it's because the whole world lives in extremes. And the whole goal of life was to come to the middle. And so I think if anytime anyone's ever wondering, hey, do I do this or do I do that? The answer is probably both and in the middle. And that's where I think people will find fulfillment and meaning and purpose, not in the extremes.
What would you say is the best career advice you ever got?
Oh yeah. I would say the best career advice I ever got was when I said, hey, there are so many things I can do. I have so many ideas. I have so many paths that I want to take. Where do I start? And one of my mentors said to me, he said, open every door. First, he said, knock on every door and keep walking through the ones that remain open. Sometimes you're going to knock on a door and it's not going to open. Sometimes you're going to knock on a door and it's going to open right away. Sometimes you're going to knock on a door and 3 others are going to open behind you. And your job is to only walk through the ones that stay open for you and keep knocking on the ones that you're still patient for. And I love that advice, because I think sometimes we're like, I want to do so many things. What do I do? And the answer is do all of them and see which one works, see which one stays open. I didn't think I'd end up where I am today in my career. And I'm only here because I just keep walking through the ones that stayed open. There are so many doors that have stayed closed that I've knocked on for years. And some of them I keep still knocking on because I want them to open in the future. But that doesn't mean I don't keep walking through the ones that remain open. And I think the mistake we make is we keep knocking on a door and just waiting and waiting and waiting, rather than knocking on some more doors and starting to walk through them. And that's how we feel stuck, lost, confused, disheartened, because that door may open in 7 years. And by the way, that's kind of my life story. I first came to LA. This was what, maybe 8 years ago. A production company saw one of my videos that had gone viral, and they thought it would be amazing to build a TV show with me. They'd invited me to LA to pitch a TV show. I went around the whole city, and the TV show got rejected from every place. No one wanted it whatsoever. And that's why I started On Purpose. So I didn't start On Purpose because it was my first choice. I started On Purpose because I got rejected from 8 networks for a TV show. And now that I have On Purpose, I'm like, I'm really glad I didn't get the TV show, because On Purpose is something I built. It's my heart. I don't take any notes on how it should be done. It's
Yeah.
my.
You're not answering to anybody. Have you heard?
Totally.
Have you ever read or heard like the Third Door book?
I have not. I have come across it. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
I actually recorded a beautiful episode on it for my Daily J on Calm, and we have an episode dedicated to that book that we talked about. So yes, 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 yes.
I love the concept of the kind of the thesis of the book. To your point, you were knocking on the front door, but sometimes it's the back door that you have to go
Absolutely.
through. I love that analogy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes you're just knocking on one door, and you got to knock on door 2, 3, and 4, because you don't know which one's going to open. And I think that's what I'm saying. The mistake is you're just knocking on the same door for 10 years.
Did you say that like your first production company for On Purpose backed out at the last second?
That was specifically to do with the podcast. So when I had the idea for On Purpose, I went and pitched it to all these podcast companies. They all said no. And then finally one got interested. And 2 weeks before it launched, they pulled out. And in their exact words, they said it wouldn't be a big podcast. And they said, people like listening to you for 4 minutes on your Facebook and YouTube videos. No one wants to listen to you for an hour. The exact quotes. And I scrambled and scrapped for 2 weeks, and we still launched on the day we said we would launch, 14th Feb 2019. And it was all self-funded. I pretty much put every dollar I had at the time into the podcast. And so it was my biggest bet. And I am so grateful that it worked. But I really put everything I had into it at the time, because we didn't have a lot. And, you know, I've always booked the show myself. We've always produced the show ourselves. We've always taped it ourselves, distributed it ourselves. It's been really, really fun.
Why do you think you weren't discouraged? I feel like a lot of us get feedback, and it's so easy, Jay, to be like, you know what, maybe this podcast thing, all these producers in LA, the other podcast production companies, why do you think you went forward versus maybe scrapping the whole project?
I think I've had enough. At that point, I'd had enough feedback in my life that most people won't get your vision. So when I chose to become a monk, everyone around me thought it was the dumbest idea in the world. And I still did it. And I know what it feels like to do something when everyone thinks you're stupid. And then when I left, people still thought I was stupid when I left, because they were like, wait, you've just wasted 3 years of your life and now you've left. So you failed again. And so I looked like a failure when I started, and I looked like a failure when I left. And so I've been in enough points in my life. Again, when I was at a stable consulting job, I was at Accenture, and I was launching these videos and building I was just sharing videos and content online. And again, people were like, what, you're going to leave your stable consulting job to like make YouTube videos? Like, are you serious? Like, people thought I was stupid then. So I think by that point in the podcast, I'd been through enough moments in my life where I'd done things when people didn't agree with them. And I just started to learn that people don't disagree with you because they know more or because they hate you or they don't believe in you. They just disagree with you because it's not been done yet. And they just disagree with you because they don't see what you see. And that's okay. It's not that they're bad people, or it's not that they are negative people. They're just projecting their own limitations onto you, and that's okay. And so to me, what gave me courage or strength or bravery to do it was just, I've been in this position before. And I feel like that today, by the way. It never changes. That never goes. As long as you're growing and moving into a new world and a new phase, you're always going to get that. If you kind of stay in your own lane, like if I still was just making Facebook and YouTube videos, then I wouldn't feel that anymore. I'd always feel like, hey, I'm doing great at this because that's what I'm doing. But as soon as you're venturing into a new area, like with Junie, with our sparkling tea, it's like, it's a new area. I'm not a beverage person. I don't come from that industry. I'm not, so, but now in the 2 years that we've had the brand, we've outperformed, built an incredible product, getting so much traction. But it's like, again, at the beginning of the journey, you're always going to have people saying, oh, wait, are you sure you want to do this? Is this what you want to do? So I've got used to that at this point in my life.
It is, if you watch Shark Tank, the beverage space is like the hardest nut to crack, right? Just from even just watching those episodes. There's a few that have maybe sort of broken the barrier and maybe sold to Coca-Cola or something like that. But it is something where I look at it and I think to myself, Jay, you don't need the money. You don't need the headache. Yet again, I could sound like someone who said, don't start a podcast. And so I did wonder, like, why, why this, why now?
So I think the truth is, after having built, like, written books, podcasts, digital content, everything that we've done so far, I really felt that the challenge I saw was, how do people live this if the alternatives don't exist? So when I met my wife, I was addicted to sugar. And when I say addicted to sugar, I grew up eating a chocolate bar, a chocolate biscuit, a chocolate yogurt, and a chocolate ice cream nearly every day, and a soda every day. Throughout the whole of college, I had a soda and a chocolate bar every day. And when I say soda, I'm talking about like a sugary soda with, tons of calories, tons of whatever, and then a chocolate bar as well. And that's probably how I got through college. And so when I met my wife, who's a nutritionist, a dietitian, an Ayurvedic enthusiast, she really had to train me off of sugar and educate me on the dangers of sugar in my diet. But then when we were looking for alternatives, you couldn't really find anything. You find a lot of things saying that it's healthy, but it's still packed with sugar. It's still packed with a bunch of stuff. And so inventing Junie was part of my own need of wanting to drink something that made me feel good, gave me energy, boosted my mood, but that wasn't filled with stuff. So we built something that is only 5 calories, is 0 grams of sugar, and has our super 5 ingredients of ashwagandha, lion's mane, green tea or hibiscus, reishi mushroom, and acerola cherry. And all of those are adaptogens and nootropics that are also shown to boost mood and maintain energy. So ashwagandha is great for memory and endurance. Lion's mane is amazing for stress and anxiety. Green tea, of course, has been shown to be great for brain health and metabolism. You've got reishi mushroom that fights fatigue, and you've got acerola cherry that has vitamin C and antioxidants. Yep. And I can talk about taking all those things every day, but until I make it really easy for someone to do, they've still got to build the discipline, the habits, the purchasing choices. They've got to do all of that. And I realized that's hard to do when you walk into a supermarket and there's just a million things available and everything screaming at you. So to me, I look at it differently. I look at it as, I've done the education part, but I've got to build the products that represent that so that people can actually make that easy for them. Because just like me, I don't have the discipline, if I didn't have my wife in my life, to go and find the right thing to do if you don't have someone like that. Now, I'm lucky my wife's a nutritionist and a dietitian and a genius at this stuff. But, if you don't have someone like that in your life, a family member, a friend, whatever it may be, chances are you're just doing something thinking it's good for you. And then you get older and your health's like, going down the drain. And I've got plenty of friends who've overdosed on sugar, fried food, sugary sodas, artificial, all the rest of it. And I'm like, I want to create ways to make it easy, accessible, fun, tasty. It doesn't need to be this. Why are we making being healthy hard? That's my point. Like, why
Yeah.
can, and it shouldn't be this constant onus on, well, if you listen to my podcast, you should be able to fix your discipline. It's like, well, some part of discipline is also having choice. And that's where Junie comes from. It comes from this desire that I had, which was like, I want something I can pick up. I mean, the amount of times I'm in a restaurant, and we haven't got there yet with Junie. I mean, we're doing really well. We're at Sprouts. We've got Target distribution. We've got doing amazing at Air One, doing great at Albertsons, Gelson's, Wegman, Costco, Target nationally. It's been incredible. But sometimes I'll go to a restaurant and be like, hey, do you have anything on the menu that just doesn't have sugar in it? Right? Or artificial sugar. And it's like, they don't. And so like, I just want people to have an option that means they don't have to constantly compromise on their health when they're out.
Jay, when we met about 2 years ago, I spent a few minutes with Roddy. I didn't know what adaptogens were back then. And now my cabinet is full of them. Ashwagandha, holy basil leaf, all those sort of more natural herbs that are good for you. Even the chai that I stopped drinking coffee about 11 months ago. And the chai that I drink, the matcha that I drink, it actually has those in it as well. And so I'm seeking those out myself. And so that's really cool that you can actually like align those two things.
And that's what we've seen. I mean, that is what my audience was asking for. Like, okay, well, what do we drink then? Okay, well, what supplements do we take then? All right, well, what do we do then? And so it's coming from demand. It's not coming from, like you said, like, I have a million ideas. We could do anything. It's like, but I'm trying to make it easy. And we've seen that what you just said, like the growth on Amazon, which has been led by customers looking for a healthier functional beverage, has been insane. Like we're growing 60% new customers every month on Amazon. And our repeat rate is just incredible. Like everyone's coming back every month, whether they're buying our decaf flavors or caffeinated flavors. We're seeing that not only are people searching for it, people are coming back for it because it's solving a real need for people. And we just had our day one of our Amazon Prime Day this week that just went was 2 times our best day on Amazon and 150% over last year's Prime Day.
Wow, you really know the numbers.
Yes, like it's crazy, but it's crazy, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's insane to see that. Well, it comes back to the systems, right? Systems are important to me. Like I want people to have this. I want people to stop feeling like all they're doing is having 40% of their daily sugars in one drink a day. Like if you're drinking your calories, it's and the day 2 of Amazon Prime Day this week, it just went. That's why I know it so well as well. Was 120% over to last year, and now our second best day ever in our history. And so you're only seeing demand accelerate. You're only seeing people want healthy drinks. You're seeing people like the taste of it. It's bringing something new to the space. Like the sparkling tea category or the cold tea category has had no disruption. And being Indian and British, there's nothing more Indian and British than tea. And
people vote with their wallets, right? And so you can see that it's not just
people,
video
people
views.
Want to be healthier. People want to be healthier. There's a growing non-alcoholic segment. Like people are moving away from alcohol. They want to be sober. We've got the decaf offerings that are serving a lot of people, and it tastes great. And that's all Radhi. Radhi's the genius behind the flavor and everything. So flavor and the function. She's really the genius behind it. But I think that's where it came from. It was just like this is our first product that we wanted to again be at the intersection of entertainment and education. We wanted it to be fun and flavorful and functional, because that to me is something shouldn't taste bad to be good for you, and something that tastes good shouldn't be bad for you.
Right.
And that's what we're trying to solve, is like, how can it taste good and be good for you? Because right now there's loads of stuff in the market that's bad for you but tastes great, or that's good for you but tastes bad. And we've solved the middle.
That's awesome. Well, congrats on the success. I mean, it sounds like you guys are building something great. I have a couple rapid fire questions, if that's okay. If you got a couple minutes.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. You spent time with Dr. Gabor Mate, and I'm wondering, what is it about trauma that you think maybe we get wrong sometimes?
I love Dr. Gabor Mate. He's amazing. We've become good friends. We've become really good friends. We've meditated together. He was my special surprise guest in Vancouver on my tour. He's been on the show like 3 times, maybe. What's my favorite thing he said? I repeat so many of his words so often, but I'm trying to think of something that really, really stands out. I think something that he shared that's really beautiful is that we think of traumatic events in our life and they end up being the things you would think or trauma is like. And his perspective is the trauma didn't happen at that event, it happened before it. So he says that if something bad happened to you and you didn't tell your parents, that event wasn't the trauma. The trauma was you never trusted your parents in the first place. And that's a really fascinating perspective. So he's not saying that event isn't traumatic or hard, but the point he's making is that it was harder because you had the trauma from before where you couldn't tell your parents or you couldn't tell your family. And that's fascinating. And so I think sometimes we're trying to protect the people we love in our life from big traumatic events. But actually, what we need to do is make sure we always have a line of communication with them, because chances are they will go through something difficult. But do they think they can turn to us in that difficulty? Helping someone you love avoid difficulty is important, but it's almost as important, if not more, that they know they can turn to you when they're in difficulty. Which
I
is just
love that.
an interesting shift. Yeah.
I didn't know he was on that many times. I'll have to go check out the other. I can listen to him talk all day. He's so incredible.
He's my I mean, he is my all-time favorite trauma expert without a doubt.
Okay. You spend a time with a lot of people who I would say are relationship experts, people like Esther Pearl. How do you know a relationship is worth saving?
If both of you want to save it. If both of you don't want to save it, it's not worth saving, because a relationship takes 2 people. And I think that's the mistake. We often think, well, do I think it's worth saving? It's like, it's only worth saving if you and that person want to save it. If that other person doesn't want to save it, it's not worth saving. And it's not possible to save it. And I think that's where we go wrong, because we go, but I want it to work and I want it to figure out. And it's like, but that person's checked out. And you can waste a lot of time, money, and energy and life trying to convince someone to be in your life, but don't waste your energy trying to convince someone to stay in your life when they don't want to be in it. And it's not worth saving if they don't want to save it, because it's almost like you can't save someone's life if they don't want to save their own life. So you can't save your relationship if you both don't want to save the relationship, because it requires 2 of you.
I've heard you say people don't change for people, they change for themselves as well. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, that's a hard truth. I think people struggle with it because we want to believe that people change for people. People change for people sometimes, but they don't change because you want them to change. They change because they want to change. So a parent may completely change when they have a child, because now they feel a different set of responsibility. But they didn't change because the child wanted them to change. They changed it because they wanted to change for the child. That's the nuance. Like, the child rarely says to the parent, like, I wish you gave up alcohol. It's the parent that goes, God, I think my alcohol habit isn't great. I just interviewed Julia Fox, and I mean, her life is amazing. That episode is one of my favorite recent episodes I've done. And a lot of people were quite judgmental of why I would interview Julia Fox, but I listened to her book Down the Drain on audio, and it was phenomenal. That
Good one.
Okay. Amazing for someone who's lived and had real life experience. But I'll summarize what she's. I mean, she's lived an incredible life. She's been through a really difficult childhood, became a sex worker, addicted to heroin. I mean, the works, right? At the same time, starred in Uncut Gems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the part of the story that I wanted to share was, she said that having a child changed her life. She's now been 3 years sober, 3 years celibate, and taking care of her child. She changed for someone, but it wasn't because that person wanted her to change. And I think the problem is we are trying to change our partner and they're not changing for us, and we think we're going to change them, they're only going to change if they want to change.
Well, two more questions. Last one
Yeah.
with about your podcast. I listened to the one with Dr. Orna Guralnik, if I'm saying it right.
Yeah.
What do you think is our blind spot for most people when it comes to cultivating meaningful relationships?
That we should just get each other. That if we're right for each other and we're good for each other, we should just get each other. And that there isn't any work required or any effort required or any molding or adapting required. We should just get each other. I mean, me and my wife have been together for 12 years, married for 9 years. We are still learning to constantly get each other in different ways. And we've both put in work, and that's what a relationship is, where both people are putting in effort and work to get each other. And so you're not going to get to a meaningful relationship without meaningful disagreement and meaningful discussion and meaningful debate. It's just not going to happen. And so this idea that when I meet someone, we should just get it and hit it off and it should make sense. Sure, in some cases that's the case. That me and my wife definitely had that too. But overall, it's not going to just require that 2, 3, 4 years in. It's going to require a lot more reflection, introspection, self-work. The idea that the relationship will become meaningful if they're working on their relationship with themselves, you're working on your relationship with yourself, and then you're working on your relationship together. And it takes all those 3 things to work simultaneously, which requires a lot of patience. You know, your partner's not going to grow at the same pace as you. I think of it as like, imagine you and your partner are going to the same party, but your partner calls you up and says, hey, I'm going to be 30 minutes late. And you go, okay, do you want me to wait for you outside, or do you want me to go inside and wait for you inside? Do you want me to actually come get you? Are you taking the train, or like, do you not want me to come get you? And then they're like, well, actually, you know what? I'm actually like feeling really nervous. I don't even know if I want to come at all. Okay, well, if you don't want to come at all, do you want me to go, or do you want me to be with you? I really need to go, actually, because there's a lot of network. That's a real relationship. A real relationship is just, hey, we're going to the same party. We both look great together. Couple goals. Yes, we made, that's not real. So to me, it's that ability to have that real life human conversation that leads to a meaningful relationship that I think is a big misconception. It's a big missed point.
Yeah. When you both said when you're not arguing, something might be wrong when there's, no back and forth dialogue. Totally. I love that. Jay, what's one thing that you know now that you wish you knew at 27?
Ooh. That no matter what your intention is, no matter how much you care, no matter how much you try, you will always be misunderstood by people who want to misunderstand you. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how much you care, how much you lead with your heart, how much you love, how you show up. People who want to misunderstand you will always misunderstand you. And I wish I knew that at the start, because I always just felt that, hey, if you have good intentions and you try your best and you're a good person, then that will, I think that shines through for most people. But if people want to misunderstand you, you'll always be misunderstood. And that will always be a small minority. It will never be the majority, but you got to accept that that's reality. You're not going to beat that. That's not going to not exist. And so, yeah, I wish I knew that at 27. Well, these were great questions, man. I really enjoyed talking to you. So it's easy to be kind. You're super easy to talk to. Great questions. You're super present. And, I can tell that you're really thinking about stuff and want to help people. I think that's what you notice when you're hearing someone's question. Like, you really want to help your audience. So it's no wonder that you're successful in what you do and people connect with you and relate to you, because you can tell by every question you ask, it's got nothing to do with anything about from wanting to help people. And so that means the world to me. And that's the kind of people I like to be around. So thank you, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you, man. Take care, man. Take care of yourself. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.